Hey guys, Christian from Shadowstepper Films back here again today with another product review. This time we're going to be talking about the Ronin M Gimbal, but before we get into that, be sure to check out all of our links down in the description to our Facebook, Twitter, and our own website with all of our blog posts, all of our short films, everything Shadowstepper Films right there for you to look at. Also, be sure to go down and click the subscribe and bell notification so you can stay updated for future uploads like this one, as well as our budget tips and techniques for indie filmmakers and our own short films. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into the video. So we'll start off with the specs of this thing as I do with most product reviews. So this thing is about 5 pounds and it can stabilize about up to 8. Usually you don't want to cross the 6 pound threshold, otherwise it starts to struggle a little bit. Obviously, as a gimbal, it has 3-axis stabilization powered by motors, and the battery for which lasts about 3 hours on average. This gimbal also offers 3 different operating modes, which is going to be the undersling, the briefcase, and the upright modes. Also, with a USB connection and Wi-Fi, you can connect this thing directly to your mobile device using the app to tune all of the settings directly from the phone. And the device itself also comes with a remote control for a second party to use while one person is operating it, and it runs for about $1,000 on average. Now when we get in this video, let's see if that is worth it. So first up, let's cover the cons, or kind of the bad parts about this product. Number one, for me anyways, as an Android user, is the app does not seem to be very compatible with the Android operating system. Very oddly enough, I haven't seen too many issues about it running on iPhone or Apple in any way, but for some reason Android just seems to have some issues on the app. I'm sure there's some workarounds online, but for me that's a huge issue because that's where you do all of the tuning for the Ronin and make sure that everything can run as smoothly as possible is right through that app. So if that doesn't run smoothly, the gimbal doesn't run smoothly, things might break and you might be out $1,000. Also, talking about tuning, it also requires the tuning stand to be able to even set this thing down, as it has no feet or anything on it. It's basically just a handlebar with the carriage for the camera. There is no way to set it down other than carrying this awkward stand around. And speaking of the carriage, it is honestly too small. I realize it's intended for DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, but there are plenty of people like me who would love to throw their C100 on it. I've got a C100 Mark II. I'd love to throw it on there, get some really nice stable footage, and while I can, it is very awkward and does not sit properly the way that it should, and it really strains out the motors, which makes me uncomfortable. Another issue with the stand is that this thing is really awkward to transport. When I bought it, there's several different packages you can get with it. The one I got did not come with a carrying case for it, which costs some extra money. And trying to take it around anywhere, trying to transport it is so hard because you don't want to just have a free-floating gimbal and risk damaging anything. You don't want to just sit it on the stand and have the sand sitting freely. It's so weird to try to transport, especially long distances. You pretty much need the case, and to get the case, if you don't get the right package, it costs some extra money. And not only is it awkward to transport long distances, it's even awkward to transport short distances when it's not powered on, because all of the motors just float freely as well, and it really just likes to do what it wants. It has no path. It just kind of goes wherever it feels like it, I guess. And it just really flops around everywhere, gets in the way all awkwardly, hits you all the time if you can't have both hands on it, and it's a mess. And this is kind of a small issue for me, but the remote is huge. It really should not be. There's no reason for it to be that big. DJI is good with small form controllers. Why does the Ronin's controller have to be this big, massive brick? Whereas you look at the DJI Air, and it's just this little thing that you can slide in your pocket and be out, on the field with. It's so weird to me how that works. I get obviously bigger Joy-Cons or bigger joysticks and everything for better movement, but the controller I really don't think needs to be that big. I don't understand it. I mean, there's probably some hardware thing that I'm just not aware of because I'm not an engineer or tech person or anything. I don't know all of the hardware behind it, but to me I feel like they could have made it smaller. And while you're using the gimbal, it does not register movement very quickly. And from what I understand, I think that's just a general problem with gimbals. But from using this thing, it seems like it takes a lot for it to register any sort of panning or tilting. It's weird. Now on to the pros of this bad boy. Obviously, as a gimbal, it has great stabilization. It does its job. perfectly. Everything that it's intended to do in terms of just stabilizing your footage and keeping a nice steady shot, it nails. Also has really comfortable hand grips and good support. Like, it makes it really easy to just carry it around. You also get a top handle for those low down shots, or if you're like me and you have an easy rig backpack, you can attach it to that, and then boom, you can carry it around all day long, not having to worry about too much about the weight, because you've got that extra support to take it off of your shoulders entirely. It also has a really nice carbon fiber build, which personally, I love carbon fiber. My Morton S60C is carbon fiber. My slider is carbon fiber. If I could, I would have a carbon fiber tripod, but the ones I was looking at were a little too out of my price range, so I didn't. But carbon fiber to me is just like indestructible. I am a person who drops things all the time, and to have that extra durability behind me to ensure that I'm not destroying something as expensive as that, very quickly at least, is huge to me. Having that sturdiness behind it is just something that I feel personally is a necessity. And while it doesn't spread throughout the entire build, even just having the top handle and the bar itself be carbon fiber is a huge difference. And with the tuning stand, the nice thing is you can take off the top of the tuning stand that the Ronin actually has to sit on and put it on top of a C-stand or a tripod. Oh boy, does that help. Let me tell you, it makes things so much easier. If you don't want to leave your stand on the ground or on a table, you can just take the top of it and throw it on a C-stand at like a correct standing height and make life so much better. And I'll admit, while the app on Android does have its issues, the auto-tune stability actually works really nice. They have presets in there for specific types of cameras, like the red cameras or DSLR or mirrorless. They have that in there so you can get kind of a rough idea on the adjustments and then micromanage it from there. But there's also an auto-tune stability button, which really helps, especially with my C100, because this thing needs a lot of tuning. It takes forever to be able to get that Ronin running at just the right amount so that it's not overworking the motors, but it's also still making sure the image is stable. So having that feature was actually super helpful, and I'm super glad that DJI included it in the app. And adjusting this gimbal is actually super easy when you're going to balance it initially. It has all the numbers right there. You can see everything. It's easy to micro adjust everything, get it set up to exactly how you need it. Granted, with something like a C100 where it's really heavy in all directions, it's super hard to get it properly balanced beforehand, but using a DSLR and mirrorless, super easy, makes it really nice and quick to be able to get everything set up. It's not like a steady cam where you gotta sit there for 15 minutes properly balancing the thing to make sure everything works properly. The fact that this thing can hold up to 8 pounds is insane, because it does mean that I actually can use my C100 with my biggest lens on there, which is my Tamron 70-200mm. That on my Canon C100 Mark II, without any of the modular pieces, runs about 6.2 pounds, upwards towards the top of the limit of the gimbal, but thankfully that's a telephoto lens. I don't really plan to be using that too much on my gimbal. I use my 18-35mm Sigma or my 50mm Pancake Canon lens. That's about all I used on the gimbal, and everything seems to work perfectly. So that is super nice. And also, this thing's different shooting modes, having the briefcase, upright, and undersling modes, all super handy to have. Gives you much more variability when it comes to different scenes and different layouts. If you need to go down like a narrower hallway, you can easily put it into the briefcase mode, have a better shot that way. If you have a rig like mine where the carriage is just too small and it's hard to fit the build in there, you can go into the upright mode, and then you don't have to worry about your vertical space being too small. And this thing can be remote controlled, which is a huge plus. If you're running on a several person crew, you can have somebody just worrying about moving the camera, just moving their body with the gimbal. Someone else can be worrying about the actual panning and tilting. You basically just gotta hold steady. That is a super helpful thing to me, especially, like I said, if you have the crew to work with. And this thing's battery life is actually really impressive. I was worried because I've seen bigger batteries like this on bigger pieces of gear like this that don't like to last very long. The fact that each battery gets 3 hours of power, plus they charge super quick. Basically, as soon as I pulled the battery out of the box, by the time I had the Ronin set up, the first battery was already ready to go. So the fact that they charge that quickly is super awesome, and I really love that. It makes charging easy and nice on the go, so that way when I'm out shooting, if my first battery dies, I can plug it in, and by the time my second battery dies, the first one will be charged again. Super, super nice to have. So as long as you got 2 batteries and access to a charger with power, you are pretty much golden. And the last thing about this is the mounting plate is super easy to use. You've got several different options for being able to mount your camera to it. When I use my C100, I usually mount it on 2 different points with 2 different types of screws. and they provide the Allen wrenches and everything, and it's just such an easy tool to use. I really could not recommend it anymore. I really want to also find a universal plate to go along with it, but with the Ronin, I've seen there are some issues with trying to use a universal plate on top of it because it just takes out too much of the room in the undersling. So I personally, I guess I couldn't really recommend it, but the Ronin's quick release plate is actually nice enough that I really don't have to worry about it too much. So really thankful that that's a feature. So anyways, I think that's really all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you all in the next video next week. Peace out.
Okay, I've been working like 3 jobs. Probably why I never see ya. Probably why I never have time for the fake friends that won't be ya. Oh God, I've been running now. Up early when the sun is out. Not selling out my own soul, but those real ones, they coming out. Oh look who's reaching out. Old friends wanna feature now. They don't work, so they need it free. Ooh.